All right, next we're going to talk about multiplication in other bases. And the key here is to multiply just as if you were in base 10, but then carry groups of the base to the next place value. So we know that multiplication is really repeat addition. Let's do a problem in base 10 and see what we mean by that. So let's do something like 47 times 6. Now when we do 6 times 7, you've probably memorized that as being 42. But remember what that means is we have 4 groups of 10 with 2 left over. And the key that we're talking about is that 4 groups of 10 have to get carried to the next place value. So there's our 4 groups of 10, and then the 2 left over stay down below. Then we continue multiplying, so we do 6 times 4, which was 24, and then we have to add 4 to that, so we're going to add the 4, so we get 28. And so we had 2 groups of 10 with 8 left over, so we got 282. So that's kind of the process of our long multiplication, and we're going to apply that now to other bases. So we have 4 base 5 times 3 base 5. Now when we think about multiplication, let's try it using 4 groups of 3. That's really what 4 times 3 means. So here's one group of 3. Here's 2 groups of 3. 3 groups of 3. And 4 groups of 3. So visually, this is how much is 4 times 3, just right there. Now, the way this can help us is if we're in other bases, all we have to do is look for groups of that base 5. So we just want to circle here 5 of these 1s, so there's a group of 5, and here's a group of 5, and you can see that there are 2 left over. So the question is really, how many groups of 5 do we have? 2. And how many left over? 2. So this would be 2 base 5. Now let's think about it in straight mathematical terms. So 4 times 3 here equals 12. And all we have to say is how many groups of 5 is this with how many left over. Okay, so we know it's 2 groups of 5 with 2 left over. And we can check because 2 times 5 is 10 plus 2 is our 12. So we have our 2 groups of 5 with 2 left over, base 5. So this process is very similar to what we did for addition. We just have to do the multiplication in base 10 and then translate that to base 5. Okay, so go ahead and try example 2 on your own and come on back when you're finished to check your work. Alright, welcome back. So the first thing I did here was 3 times 3 and I got 9. But we can't write 9 in base 5, so we think how many groups of 5? Well, there's one group of 5, so we'll carry that up there with 4 left over, and we have that there. Next we look at this and we go 3 times 1. Okay, so 3 times 1, but then we have to add the 1 that we carried, so plus 1 was 4, and so we got 4 right there, so 4 base 5. Alright, let's move on. Now here we have a 2-digit times a 2-digit, so it becomes a little more difficult. So we have 3 base 7 times 5 base 7. Now because we're going to have multiple places that we have to multiply, I'm going to do these in different colors. So first we'll just deal with multiplying by the 5 right here. So we do 3 times 5, which is 15. And we have to think how many groups of the base So that would be 2 groups of 7 with how many left over? Well, this is 14, so we need one more. So we have 2 groups at the base with 1 left over. So we're going to put a 2 up here with 1 left over. Next we do is 5 times 4, and that's 20, but then we have to add the 2, so it's really 22. And so we say, how many groups at the base is that? Well, 3 groups of 7 with 1 left over. So we're just going to put the 3 here because there's nothing to put it on top of. So 3 groups of 7 with 1 left over. Now next we move over and we multiply everything by 2. But because this is in the second place value, we actually cross off that first place value, and we use kind of a placeholder of a 0 here. So I was always told to put a 0 with an X in it. And now we do 2 times 3, okay? And 2 times 3 is 6. So how many groups of 7 is that? Well, it's no groups of 7 with 1 left over, with 6 left over. Okay, so we're just going to write the number 6. So again, anytime you have something less than the base, just write it. Now we have 2 times 4, and this is 8. Now remember we had that 2 up there, but notice it's in red because that was when we were multiplying by the 5. So that is only used that one time and not in this second time. So 2 times 4 is 8. We don't worry about the 2. So again, we need to say how many groups of 7 with how many left over? Well, that's 1 group of 7 with 1 left over. So we're just going to put it here, 1 and a 1. Now what we have to do with this is come back and we're going to add, but we have to add in base 7. So these are still base 7 numbers right here. So 1 plus 0 is 1. 1 plus 6 is 7, which is 1 group of 7 with 0 left over. And then 1 plus 3 plus 1, that is 4 plus 1 or 5. And then 1. So we have 1, 5, 0, 1, base 7. Okay, I want you to try example 4 on your own. And when you're finished, go ahead and come on back and check your work. All right, welcome back. So that is multiplication in other bases.